So welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at a brand new wargame called Downfall of the Third Reich from Do It Games. This is a 2 or sometimes 3-player grand strategic, kind of a light World War II European Theatre wargame. There we go. We got through all the text. Do It Games is a Spanish company. Are they a new company?
Are they a new company? I'm not sure I can answer that.
I don't know either. But
I became aware of them new in 2022.
And this is the first game of theirs that we have played. So it's new to us, at least.
These were a Kickstarter along with another game, Downfall of Empires, World War I.
Yes, which are a similar grand strategic game, I believe.
Yeah.
And these are designed to play in just a couple of hours, maybe 2 to 3 hours.
I'd say 4 hours.
Yeah.
Because it's especially 22 turns.
Your first play is... you might get much faster at this, but it's kind of a bunch of dice rolling in. It's a little bit slow in combat. But designed by Victor Gatala, and we just finished playing this for the first time. So let's kind of just dive on in. So the first thing I wanted to say about this, having not played a game of theirs, is that the components are really nice.
Oh, yeah.
Playing with this game was very enjoyable.
Yeah, nice board.
Pre-rounded counters.
Great pre-rounded counters.
Nice little artwork they put on things. There's all these little technology tiles that are a little bit bigger with cool artworks on them and stuff. So playing with this was fun.
And it looks really good. I mean, sitting on the table, it looks really good. It actually kind of draws you in, frankly.
Yeah, you see this and it's like, ooh.
Yeah. Like when I walked down and you had set it up, I'm like, ooh, that looks really, really unique. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's one of those games where it's, it's at an Axis and Allies kind of level, where you've got, stacking limit in the areas of 3, it's either men or tanks, and then there's some kind of abstracted air warfare that you put in as modifiers to things.
Air missions, right?
Yeah. And so it's a game of, trying to take, key areas to make different factions surrender. And the reality is this game is the Germans have to not lose. The victory conditions in this are, if the Germans haven't surrendered at the end of the game, they win. If they surrender on the very last turn of the game, it's a draw, and any other result is that they lose. Because you're going to play, it starts in 1940, so you have to invade France, and you go all the way until middle of 1945, and so you have to launch Barbarossa, you in theory have to go and do North Africa, and you have to then hang on to everything until the end of the game, and there comes a point in the game where it is just defending and hanging on, and you will be like you can't win an auto victory as the Germans, which that's something that's very unique about a game like this. Almost every other kind of grand strategic European theatre game has, if you can take Moscow and London, you win. This doesn't have that at all.
Well, and frankly, I took London, right? Yep. Operation Sea Lion went swimmingly. I had to do it twice to get it to work, but and somebody online asked, what was the Allied player doing? Sleeping? And I said, no, he was just fighting me down in North Africa.
That's the thing, is you don't have, there's no auto lose victory conditions like that. So if you go and take London, sure, you lose an action and it's not fun, but it doesn't hurt me as the Allies enough for me to you kind of go do some base trading and stuff.
And I think about the points that I put in to do that, the supply points. To do an amphibious crossing was, 2 points, and I had to do that twice. I lost guys.
Commit some air, and that's points to get those.
And it's the same thing down in North Africa. Frankly, I thought masterfully I did very well in North Africa.
Yeah.
You would disagree with me because you're just that way.
All my guys died.
But I moved Dak down there, right, with another German infantry, and I teamed up with, I think, 3 Italian infantry units, and I pretty much walked across North Africa and kicked you out, and for all that effort and time, the Russians lost 2 supply points.
Yep.
Out of a max of 7.
Yeah.
Which, actually, that was good. But I remember thinking, boy, I spent a lot just to make you lose 2 points for 8 or 10 rounds, So there were some interesting elements. I took Suez, I took London, and I don't feel I got much out
But
of
if
it.
you do that, you win every other European theatre game out there.
True.
Right? But you cannot win that in this
No.
game. The Germans only win by not dying.
Yeah.
And as such,
Yeah.
it creates an interesting dynamic because you're only incentivized to do historical things because you just want to cover as much land as possible so that you can die for as long as possible towards the end of the game.
Yeah. Right. I want to push you out to make the resistance
so
and
that
the
you can
effort.
retreat
Yeah.
further.
And it's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't want it to come off like I didn't enjoy the game because there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about it. Is this the best game that I've ever played? No.
No.
By no means.
But some of those the lack of victory conditions for the Germans means that you can and are less encouraged to do certain historical things and be a little bit anachronistic is all.
Well, I think my disconnect with the game, the one thing that I really disconnected with was the importance of the geographical and historical locations in Western Europe and the Eastern Front, right? Even some of these areas over here, Minsk, Moscow, if I took those, what happened? You lost half a supply point for each, rounded up.
Yes.
So Minsk did nothing, right?
If you take Minsk and Kiev, now it starts to do something.
Which they're very takeable. I mean, they are takeable.
After that, though, it's very difficult.
Getting to Moscow, getting to Kharkov, I'm going to be honest, I would think every roll would have to go your way as the Allies to get any further.
As the Axis.
As the Axis. To get any further than the Pripyat marshes. That's my opinion. Now, somebody's going to be sitting there saying, oh, no, I've done it a dozen times. But I'm telling you what, every time I would attack, I didn't roll that poorly, but I lost points. I lost
you take
replacements.
Step losses.
I don't have enough to replace that. So making it, so I have to come out here and you had 5 places out here that I could force you to surrender in Moscow, right? That was the only way.
Yeah, if you cover all my supply points,
you would surrender.
Which is
impossible.
Not happening.
It's utterly impossible. I just don't have enough replacement points.
And if you do that, you still don't win.
You still don't win. Yeah, you still don't win. Yeah, so I had a disconnect with my understanding of this historical geography and the importance of certain places, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
No, I do.
I have a real problem with that.
Which was a shame because I played as the Allies, so I controlled the Western Allies and the USSR. You can play it 3-player where you split those two up, but 2-player, that's what you do. And I got absolutely rocked on the Western Front. Yeah. Right? France capitulated.
France actually put up a hell of a defense.
Yeah, they lasted 1 turn longer than historical.
They actually surrendered at the end of turn 4, which was fall of 1940. I felt like I needed them to surrender in spring of 1940.
Yeah, or at latest summer.
Yeah.
At the latest.
And some of my rolls were bad, and the combat rules are just very interesting.
Well, and it's the whole, we talked about this, as the Germans, you got to get logistics. The technology logistics, you got to get that developed.
Has to be one of the first things you develop.
So that you can accrue,
and I didn't do that.
Over the longer period, more supply points. Yeah. That's like a must.
So that feels a little scripted. I think we both decided that felt very scripted.
Because you did the Air Force because you're like, ooh, let's do Battle of Britain and get all the Luftwaffe out. Which is what you're supposed to do.
I was misunderstanding the importance of that supply.
But the supply is
utterly
in this
important.
game. If you don't have as much supply as humanly possible, it's tough to do what you need to do. But like, you took London, lost to Egypt, France fell, and like I had like there was a point where the UK had half a dude in Scotland, and that's all they had, and I didn't care.
Right, because I was sitting there thinking, okay, I could move a couple guys over there, and I can take Scotland as well. But guess what? You just move over to Canada.
Yeah.
And you start making guys over there, which I understand.
It's a slow burn, but I build a bunch of guys over there, and then I naval move them over, and like Hulk smash everything, because you are limited by your counters, and you got to send everyone to the East Front. You can't leave a full-size army here in France and the UK, and so you're stretched too thin, and I just waltz back in.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I did. Was like, this was totally gone. And I was like, I know that I've pretty much won this game because you haven't made enough progress on the east
Well,
front.
and we stopped at turn 14, right? 1943.
It was, yeah.
Because you already controlled France again.
Yep.
You, on the southern tip of Italy, had done Operation Torch, and you controlled all of French North Africa. You had freedom.
Yep.
And I'm sitting down there with 3 lone Italian infantry.
Yep.
If you get 2 units onto Italian soil there, I surrender.
Italy collapses, yep.
Right.
All the Italian units leave the game. And at that
then
point, I just
really done.
walk in. Not enough on the west front. I was gonna,
you were gonna
attack
totally
there
mash me here.
because yeah.
So I ended up throwing the towel in.
Yeah.
Because there's just no reason to continue that.
So we learned some things,
I would play it different.
Is important.
Yeah.
There's some different things you wouldn't focus so hard on this. You might do this.
I also think I would focus on that supply technology first.
You got to do it.
I also feel like, particularly in the early war, when the Western Allies only have the 2 actions, right? I need to do the Battle of the Atlantic more.
And you did
I half-weighed it. I did it like every other turn.
Because
you just don't have enough
commit
actions.
supply to it, and you got to commit actions to it and stuff.
I just thought to myself, man, if I could have kept you to 1 action per turn.
Well, and we just got to 1943. I'm going to get this, which means like.
What is that? That's the air.
German non-advanced submarine missions are totally useless.
Yeah, right.
So it forces you to have to do the big stuff.
Which I was working on, but
I don't know.
I actually, to be honest, there were a lot of things that I liked. There were a lot of things that I found interesting. I thought the technology was really cool. I actually liked the combat mechanics. I'm just not sure it's fitting for the situation, and I'm not sure about the stacking limit either.
The stacking limit it's very strict and it's very tough.
Well, it's 3 units, and the Germans just don't have the replacement points to do what you need to do.
No.
So sometimes I should have the option of moving a 4th guy in, because that's about the only way they're really gonna.
Or access to something. Yeah, it felt like it was extremely tough on the Germans to do well in this game.
At least after the first couple of years.
But like, you look at the victory conditions and you're like,
Yeah.
like you
gotta survive
All
to
you
the
have
end.
to do is not die.
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to go out and conquer the whole world because.
But here we are, winter of 1943. Italy's going to fall this year.
Yeah.
Right?
Italy's done.
The Balkans are basically free of Axis control.
Yeah, I'm about to go and cut all this supply. They're going to be out of supply,
Yep.
and they can't do anything the rest of the game. And then it's, it's cleaning up at that point, and I'll have a whole year to spare probably.
Oh yeah,
Which is
this war's going to end in 1944.
Yes,
Yep.
good for early 1944.
Yeah, early 44. But I would say I enjoyed a lot of parts about this. I really did. I had an interesting time. I just think maybe they needed to balance it a little bit more. I just didn't feel like I had a chance after those first couple of years.
No, and these ones where the games are completely sandboxy, I always think Germans struggle in those games. Because unless they supercharge you, it is so easy to play Germans not as efficiently as the game designers need you to. And that's tough for playing it the first couple of times if you're new, or if you've never played a war game. This could easily be your first war game, right? 8-page rule book. And
absolutely.
Playing the Germans is often extremely challenging because they have to set the tempo, and you need experience doing that.
Yeah.
And so your first couple of games are always going to be rough in that style of game, I think. The rule book itself is a translation.
A little rough.
Need a little bit of massaging.
A little rough.
There were some rules that just contradicted what was on the play aid.
Yeah. Well, and I found the most difficult part about this is there are a lot of exceptions.
Yes.
By year, in winter or spring or summer.
Different minor nations, who and when they activate and all this stuff.
It's just not spelled out very well. It's not anywhere on your player aid. Some of it is on your player aid. Like, oddly, I found some of the information. I'm like, why would you have put that on there rather than the other things that we were struggling with? Here's a prime example. Had we not taken the break at the point that we did to eat our dinner, where I was sitting down here for 20 minutes reading the rule book, I would not have found out that once Italy enters the war, the Axis gets 3 additional supply. Why isn't that written somewhere on the supply track?
Yeah, or down here.
Yeah.
Where they've got some of
Every
the
other note.
exceptions.
That's an example. Maybe that was a late add, and maybe it got somehow left out. But those kind of exceptions that really make the game significantly
Makes a huge impact.
a huge impact. The other thing I think is some of the developments. I thought the Allies couldn't do as much developing as you were doing at the beginning. But maybe I'm totally wrong.
No, the USSR is somewhat limited in what they can do. And a lot of mine are locked by year.
Well, and some of mine were like that too. But I don't know. I just think they needed, this rule book needed a lot more clarity. It also needed a lot, like, I like how they did the yellow text here.
Yes.
Do that on some of those other little parts.
Yellow text are the most important rules.
Well, it stands out.
Well, and the terrain effects chart's printed in the book, but it's not printed on the play aid. What are we doing?
Well, and then why you put up an entire setup scenario on the back of both play aids?
Yeah,
same scenario?
Lose it on one of them.
And then put more information.
And put more information on
them. I just think, and maybe this company is new at war games. I
don't know.
I'm taking a huge leap, and I'm probably going to get murdered by those who love do it games. That's something I think needs to be worked on significantly. Now, I need to go on BGG because the guy said that he has put a player aid on there that has a lot of the exceptions.
But like, those exceptions, so many of them are just kind of seeded throughout the rule book. It's not like, hey, important things to remember, which a lot of rule books have. Like on the back page, don't forget these things because they're weird little exceptions that we put into our game for historical reasons.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in here, but you kind of got to scour the rule book every time, and like hopefully you find it, and hopefully you remember the first time you read the rule book.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit rough around the edges at times. What I'll do is I will show you how this works, because the combat is quick and easy, right?
It's kind of neat.
It's simple
kind of neat,
and it flows. And then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the map. Large, most of Europe, and then we got North Africa and the Middle East, most of which is unplayable. But you can see it's divided into kind of nations, and then those are divided up into these little regions that have a stacking limit of 3 units. Sorry, I knocked those. And it's a game of spending your supply points, which is kind of, strategic supply, fuel, ammunition, all that kind of stuff, to do combat actions. And then you have these regular actions that you're going to take to develop technologies, reinforce units, all that kind of stuff. So on your turn, first you have to spend all of your actions, and then you've got to spend all your supply for combat stuff. And then once you do combats, that's the end of your turn. So on your turn, you got these little chits that you're going to kind of go through. And, early in the war, you'll have fewer. Usually you get more later on in the war as kind of total war starts to develop and the industry starts to get behind you. So they have an action economy, and then you also have this kind of fuel economy as well. So there's 2 little economies that you're spinning plates with. But on a turn, you might do something like a development action. And when you develop something, you have these, this stack of tiles, and we'll look at some US ones here, and these are little technologies that you can develop to help you. So you can do advanced aviation, so you get better airplanes, and better airplanes are uncounterable by weaker ones, so you get an edge in the air war. Logistics, for each supply action that you take, which we'll look at, you get 7 supply units. Get 7 oil barrels instead of the normal 4. Very good. Blitzkrieg is some special movement and supply rules. Advanced warships, that helps you to counter submarines in the Battle of the Atlantic. Advanced tanks, you get better tanks. All sorts of different things. Better air industries, better tank industries, that helps you to produce more units, things like that. So that's development actions. What you're going to do is you're going to take the development action, and you take one of your tiles and you put it on development. On a subsequent turn, you can take this action again to remove it from here, and then you have it now. So real simple kind of little tech thing going on. You might take the supply action. You simply get 5 supply points as long as you kind of have your supply stuff intact. If you have the logistics, like we just said, if you've researched that, you get 7 instead of 5. Ooh, nice. Very, very good, because you're going to spend these to move your armies around. What else have we got? We have tanks. When you take the tank action, you actually spend one of your supply points to manufacture tanks. You're going to manufacture 3 tank points. That is, unless you have developed tank industry, in which case you get 5 tank points instead of 3. So you're spending 1 supply to build the frames of the tanks and to have the industry to produce them, but you haven't put out any on the board yet. You put them out with the reinforcement action. With the reinforcement action, you consult your reinforcement schedule down here. And depending on which country you are, and kind of what time of the war it is, you're going to get a certain number of them. So Germany's always going to get 4, the UK is going to get 2, but the Western Allies during total war are going to get 4, the USSR is going to get 4, and then they're going to get 8 total war up until 1943, and then it goes back down to 4. So they're churning units out in kind of once Barbarossa happens in 41, they're churning units out 41, 42, and then it kind of chills out at the end of 43. So, but reinforcements is simply putting some units out on the board. So you put them where you have a supply point. This is 1 of your reinforcement points. This is 2. If you're building tanks, let's say we have the advanced tanks technology, we can build these advanced tanks. There's a little advanced on little Shermans. Again, you spend 1 point and then 2 points. So that's 4, although you can't build all 4 of the UK. There's some special rules about that. Let's say we'll build a couple there, but when you build tanks as reinforcements, you have to deplete these 1, 2. We spent supply to have the infrastructure, but then we place them out. So once these are all depleted, because we've built a bunch of tank units, we then, on subsequent turns, are going to have to take this tanks action again to get the industry back up, churning out more kind of tank chassis, if you think about it that way. So reinforcements, we got out some tanks, and we'll say, well, let's get some men. Great, we'll get some US units out. Great, 1, 2, 3, 4, great. We've got 2 units here and 2 here, wonderful. And you have to place them in your supply areas, 1, 2, 3, and the US have 1 up here. There's also 1 down in Egypt for the UK as well. So that's reinforcements, just putting guys out on the board. Russians, they can put them out as long as you can trace a line of supply back to any of your supply sources. You can reinforce them, even if there's guys in here and it's contested. The areas are so big and the numbers are so high. That's 1, 2. We got to spend 1 Russian armor reinforcement because that was an armor unit. Let's do another one here. And then at that point, we don't have anyone left. We can spend the last few to build some guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, they had like 8, right? So reinforcements is putting guys on the board. And once you've used up your 3, 4, or 5 actions, if you're really cool, like the Western Allies during Total War, at that point, you're then going to use your supply points to do combat actions. And it's almost always a 1-for-1 unless you're doing like big naval movements or amphibious landings, or there's some special rules going on for a big long winter in 1942, or some tough stuff going on during Barbarossa. So you're going to spend 1 action point per army that you move, and you can either move 3 spaces with an infantry unit, 4 spaces with a tank unit, or you can move 2 spaces with an infantry unit and attack, or you can move 3 with a tank and attack, or you can just attack. If you're sat in place, you've got to spend 1 to attack. Or failing all of that, you can do strategic movement, which if you can move through all controlled spaces, 1 as far as you want to go. So let's say we want to move some tanks in, and we're going to do an attack. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Here, we'll move in here and attack here. Great. 1, 2, 3. So that costs 2 supply points. And then at this point, we're going to attack. And how this game works is that you have to attack. Each army attacks an army individually. If you ever have more units, let's say we had happened to have had another unit kicking around. Here, we'll bring in this guy. For another 1 point, he goes 1, 2. We've got more units than them, so this one supports one of these 2 that we choose to. And they'll use the little smaller white number there to add to your combat factors here. So, what does this look like? Currently, we are a 6 plus 2 is an 8, and we're going up against a 5. However, because we attacked across a river, we are the Germans are a +1 defensively. So you just roll a d6. So they have 3 and a 6 is 9, and we're going to roll an allied die. And we had an 8 and a 4 is 12. So we succeed. We defeat them. The person who loses the combat takes 2 steps. 1, 2. They basically almost always die. And then the attacker almost always takes 1 step as well. If ever you have a total that's double the enemy's total, you do not take a step loss when you are the attacker. So there's lots of advantages to attacking. You can't really do that as the defender as well. It's very unlikely anyway. So great, that attack was a success. And then this one here, we're not feeling quite as good because we don't have the little infantry support. So maybe we will toss in an air unit because we have missions available. Well, so do the Germans. The Germans can drop one to counter this, and so those are negated. We might go again and say, okay, I'll spend another one. And they say, well, I've got a whole bunch. We're going to negate this because we want to get as close a roll as possible. Now we don't have any left that are US aligned, so we can't support that anymore. The Germans cannot, as a defender, add air units. They can only be used to negate attacking ones. So we're going to roll here, 6 and a 5. Oh, it's a 6 and a 6 because of the river. Gross. Wonderful. So we rolled a 1 apiece. So we've got 7 aside. It's a tie. In a tie, we both take 1 step loss. And you can sit in the same area, no big deal. This is still German controlled because we haven't cleared the Germans out. But that is what combat looks like. You will do a lot of it. It is just quite simply just moving into areas, and then it's desperately trying to wait to get your turn to come round so you can drop some reinforcements and get these guys back up again and keep on going. But you will be counterattacked by the Germans. Hey, we're going to bring in some of these nasty Tiger IIs and some Panzer IVs. And there's a lot of this back and forth. It's quite attritional. And this is where it boils down to the Germans have a very hard time keeping up with those reinforcements over the long term of this game. It's tough going up against two sides, especially when the Russians have so many reinforcements in the early and mid game. But really, honestly, that's the core of how this game works. You're attempting to take these 4 supply regions of Germany. If you take all of those, the game's over, Germany surrenders, and you've won the game. So that's how the game works. What we'll do is we'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the board and the game. So playing this, I had an enjoyable time.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I have an enjoyable time playing with you.
Yeah, there you go.
The game itself, to me, I don't want to be rude, but it felt a bit pedestrian.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was just like, it was both simple, but also it was a little bit quirky at times.
Yeah.
With some of the things you've talked about.
Yeah.
And so my investment in it wasn't as strong as it is in some of the games that we played.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like, yeah, this was a game that we played.
Well, I think the goal of this game is probably an introductory level, grand strategic World War II game. You know, they're trying to fit a lot of stuff into a smaller package that people can play. I think they succeeded here. I think they ignored some of the historicity of the war, some of the importance of certain areas.
To me, if I'm going to play an introductory style war game like this, the Germans have to have an auto-win victory condition to keep it tense. Because otherwise, the Allies and the USSR, like, you can take as much of a beating as you want and you know you're going to come back.
Well, it was so funny when I did Sea Lion. I think I said to you, I was like, because your turn was finished and I started the next year and the next turn, I'm like, hey, Alexander, I think you just made a big mistake. I'm going to do Sea Lion here and you're going to lose London. And I think you were like, okay.
I'm like, I've read the rules. I don't care. It doesn't affect me hardly at all.
I'm just like, wow.
Wow. And so some of that, I'm like, it's very anachronistic. Like, if you'd have taken London and Egypt, the game's over. If you take London and Moscow, the game's over. Because that gives the German player something to focus on, to go for.
It's the only way historically the Germans could have won the war.
Yeah, if you could
control North Africa, take London, and beat the Soviets back, and the game's over. Americans aren't going to be able to come in then,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like I did that, and it just didn't pan out. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But to me, if I'm an introductory war game's got to give both players very focused victory conditions.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And auto win helps to keep a game tense, right?
Yeah.
Everything's really meaningful because I'm not just like, who cares? I know you're going to get lost in the East Front meat grinder at some point because you will be overstretched.
Yeah.
I know it's going to happen, and then you'll start to lose.
Oh, yeah.
That's how this game is. The USSR players playing the game like this.
Yeah.
They're kind of on easy mode.
Yeah, I would agree.
As soon as total war's declared after
I would agree.
Barbarossa or in
They get
1942,
8 reinforcements. Yeah,
you
it's
get
just
in the-
insane.
So you just build, and the Germans cannot keep up with that.
I think that's there's one other concern that I had about the game. I think every game that we've ever played, I'm thinking of like Triumph and Tragedy. So let's use that one as an example.
Sure.
I think the German hand on turn 1 is like 16 cards.
It's like some 12
Something
or
ridiculous
stupid.
like that. Everybody else has like 6, right? So you have a ton of stuff because historically they were building up and everybody was kind of letting them do it. And they were moving troops in here and they were doing this and they were doing that. And I remember the first turn I was like, wow, I get
do
5.
Yeah.
But I was like, I get 5 supply points.
Yeah.
And I literally built 1 tank and 1.5 infantry. And I'm like, I need more troops than this to do what I need to accomplish. So I felt that was lacking in the German.
This needed slightly more punch for the Germans early.
Well, you need that quick punch.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it again. France, if you have not defeated them by the end of spring 1940, I think you might as well just start it over because you won't have enough time to get the stuff out here that you need to. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, we've played it one time. I'm going to be completely transparent about that. We could probably play this 15 times. I don't want to play it 15 times.
No.
I think we played it. I understand it. I would like to give it another go. I thought it was interesting enough to give it another go because I think I would play completely differently.
You would, yes, absolutely. The gameplay would be different next time, but yeah.
I think there's some unique elements here. I'm not sure it's unique enough to overcome some of the challenges that I had.
But like you said, there are people out here who really like this game.
Oh, yeah.
There's people who have made dedicated, their own play aids and stuff that you can get on BGG that's probably going to tighten up some of the play style of this. So, if it's something that you're interested in, take a look at it for sure. Because it looks great on a table as well. And there is a World War I version that we've got that we're going to play at some point.
Well, and you could do this solo.
Oh yeah, there's no reason you
There's
couldn't.
no hidden
yeah,
information,
absolutely.
right? You know what tiles you're trying to do. You can see what tiles they're trying to develop.
And it's very.
I mean, you can play this solo.
It's hard to there's only so much feinting and bluffing and counterplay that you can do. Yeah, there's a couple different weird moves that you can do here and there, but
and it was kind of funny because I think both of us, we become that way with each other. We're kind of looking for that chink in the armor that I can I'm going to move over here and you've just lost Albania.
Yeah.
You were going to literally crush Italy by moving into Greece because I never attacked Greece because I didn't have enough damn action. Everybody online was telling me, oh, you got to do this. You got to take out Greece and you got to make a push on Egypt and you've got to do this. And I'm like,
the action economy of this game is extremely tight.
I've got 3 actions in limited war. 3, Alexander. 3. How many did you have? 2.
The
and the
UK
Russians
had 2, and so did the Russians. I think. I think they went. Or did I think.
And once again, I think I could have done a better job in the Battle of the Atlantic and making it so your first 3 or 4 or 5 turns, you would have had 1 action and you wouldn't have been able to do what you were able to do in some ways.
You have to spend actions and supply.
I totally get it. I get it. Yep.
And then you're not.
And then I'm not. Yep.
From
You're right.
France to the East Front.
I'm spending my money on those and then putting them out. They last 1 turn and they go away.
And it's like you're hurting me, but you're not helping yourself. And this is a game where you have to help yourself.
Yeah.
Tough stuff. There's a lot to think about in this game.
There is, and I think one person commented as I was tweeting some pictures out. They're like, it's a simple game, but there's some depth of strategy and thought that you need to think about, and I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, we were pondering over of like, if I do this, this, and this, it leads me here, here, and here. Like, there's that chess element to it of like, okay, what can these guys do? They're threatening Sicily. They're also threatening to swing over to Greece, or they can come to southern France now.
Yeah.
Like, there's all those kinds of things to look at.
Yeah.
So it's neat from that standpoint. But yeah, if you can overcome some of the things like the rulebook and...
Well, I think if they could upgrade the rulebook, get a better player aid.
And you kind of take your historical hat off in a way and think of this as like, this is quite a big sandbox for you to play around in. You know, you can get something out of this for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good comment and a good comment to end on. I think there is value here.
Yeah, so downfall of the Third Reich from Do It Games. Check this out if this is something that you're interested in. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.